There are places in Death Valley where even experienced rangers don't go. They are marked as dangerous areas on old maps, but few people know why. At the Keene Wander Mine, there are still signs saying "No entry" and rusty chains at the entrance. In the Ranger's report of the 16th of March 1987, there is a terse note. A 3-man hiking party at the north entrance is missing. The search continues. The group was never found. 10 years later, traces of the incident resurfaced in an unexpected place. My name is Jake Holt and I'm 40 years old. Prior to working for the National Park Service, I served in the U.S. Army, went through Iraq and Panama. After a divorce, life in the city became unbearable. Something had to change. So in 1995, I applied to the National Park Service. I worked in Yosemite for 2 years and then requested a transfer to Death Valley, the most isolated and rugged place I could find. Death Valley is a 13,500 square kilometer desert with an extreme climate. In summer, the temperature rises above 50 degrees centigrade. Tourists stick to the central routes, but much of the area remains sparsely visited. My area of responsibility is the northeastern sector of the park, including the abandoned mines and the deserted Urieka Plateau. The nearest ranger post is 70 kilometers away. Radio communications are unstable, especially in the canyons. In late February 1997, during a routine patrol of the Keene Wander area, I noticed fresh tire tracks on a dirt road leading to an abandoned mine. It was alarming. The road was blocked off and entry had been prohibited for years. Someone had come here on purpose, and I had no idea at the time that what was found inside the mine would connect the park's past and present with one dangerous thread. February in Death Valley is the time for patrols in remote areas. On the 21st of February 1997, I checked out the abandoned mine area. The route was standard, a dirt track along Keene Wander, then a diversion up the west slope and back to the track. At mile marker 157, something caught my eye. On this job, I learned to sense when something was wrong. It comes with experience, like a conditioned reflex. I stopped the Jeep, got out. Fresh tire tracks were clearly visible on the wet ground after a rare rain. Someone had turned onto a forbidden road. The temperature was about 10 degrees, a cool day by Death Valley standards. I checked the radio, just a rustle of static. Communication is always unstable in the canyons. I threw on my backpack and followed the trail. The Keene Wander area is not listed in the tourist brochures. Abandoned gold mines, dangerous mines, time-torn structures. In 1976, after an accident, the area was closed. It is marked on the map as off-limits to visitors. The tracks led confidently to the entrance of the mine. The rusty chain had been carefully removed and set aside. No sign of forced entry, as if someone had a key. Found cigarette butts, a couple of plastic bottles. Someone had been here recently. I switched on the torch and moved inside. The smell of damp and metal. After 30 meters, the shaft split. Footprints of boots went to the left. In the side drift, I noticed a rucksack leaning against the wall. It was Army issue. Worn. I examined the contents. A map of Death Valley from 1985 with markings. A notebook with notes, yellowed photographs. One of them showed 3 men smiling at the camera. The inscription on the back read, "Turner Expedition, March 1987, Death Valley." The last entries in the notebook are dated March 1987. We checked the coordinates. The vein should be in the northern branch. Joe thinks that the mine sites are not marked on the official plans deliberately. Strange metal containers in the side tunnel don't look like mining equipment. From there, the recordings cut off. Deeper down in the mine, I found signs of a recent stay, fresh boot prints, tripod tracks, cigarette butts. Someone had scrutinized the walls. In some places, there were fresh rock chips. In the far corner, I found a metal cylinder the size of a thermos, unmarked. Inside, there were traces of powder. Next to it lay an instruction manual with the stamp "For official use" and a fragment of text about the chemical mapping project. The date was 1978. As I walked outside, I noticed an old trailer half a mile from the entrance, artfully blended into the landscape. A pickup truck was parked nearby. The elderly man who opened the door identified himself as Robert Turner. He displayed an area permit issued by the Park Service. "Do you have anything to do with the 1987 expedition?" I asked. "That was my son, James. He led the group. 3 men, all missing." He handed the photograph back. 10 years have passed. At first I trusted the authorities, participated in the search, slept in a tent by the command post. A week, a month. Then the investigation was canceled. They said it was an accident, got lost, dehydration. "But you didn't believe it," was not the question. "There are too many gaps in the reports. The trail ends at the mine, but no one was found inside. Backpacks, gear, all gone. When I started asking questions about old military sites in the area, I was looked at like I was crazy. Then I realized that no one wanted to know the truth. Now I'm looking for it myself." I involuntarily touched the ranger's badge. The Park Service doesn't just abandon a search. If an investigation was closed, there was a good reason. Or someone wanted it closed. The walls of the trailer were hung with maps, photos, clippings. On the table were folders, magazines, rock samples. "They weren't looking for gold," Turner said. "My son was a geologist. He was interested in rumors of strange experiments in the 70s, about chemical tests in remote areas of the park. The group discovered something in a mine and disappeared." He showed documents, clippings about missing tourists, search reports, copies of inquiries. 3 days ago, some men came here. They called themselves gold prospectors, but they didn't have equipment for prospectors. GPR, chemical analyzers. They're looking for something, and it's not gold. As he left, Turner held out a phone number. "Be careful, son. What they left in those mines in the 70s is more dangerous than cave-ins or poisonous gases." Returning to the Jeep, I decided to examine the finds first before acting officially. My responsibility is the safety of the park and its visitors. In the evening, in the hut at the Grapevine Post, the finds were laid out. Turner's group's notebook described their route through the mine. The last entry confirmed that they had found something unusual, perhaps a secret chemical storehouse. The photos show young people full of enthusiasm. The container was tightly closed. I didn't risk opening it. From the window, I could see the stars over the desert, silence broken only by the crackling of the cooker. The radio transmitter came to life suddenly. "All stations. Received notification of a survey team heading to the Keen Wander area for a geological survey. Official authorization. 5 men, 2 SUVs. Arrival expected by noon tomorrow." I looked at the desk with the paperwork. The enthusiasts now had official authorization. Who are they? And what were they looking for in the mine where a group of explorers had disappeared 10 years ago? I needed to be at Keen Wanders tomorrow before this group showed up. The night was restless. The documents from my rucksack kept me awake. I got up at 5:30, still in the dark. While I made breakfast, I went over Turner's notes over and over again. Something didn't add up in the official version of their disappearance. By 6 in the morning, I was on my way. Dawn in Death Valley is always sudden. First gray twilight, then golden rays cut through the horizon and the desert comes alive. The temperature is 3 degrees and visibility is excellent. It took an hour to get to Keen Wander. I left the Jeep behind a rocky ledge, not visible from the road, but not too far away for a quick getaway. Turner's trailer was in place, smoke coming from its chimney. There was another car next to his pickup, an old Ford with California plates. Guests? I tightened my belt and holster. I'd learnt in the Army that it was better to be safe. Turner wasn't alone. In the trailer was a gray-haired man in his 60s, wearing a worn denim jacket. "This is Harris, former geologist," Turner introduced him. "Worked with the military in the 70s, retired now, but he remembers a few things." Harris studied me with the caution of a man used to keeping his mouth shut. "Turner said you found one of the containers," I confirmed. "The WG-17 series?" he asked. "Unmarked," I replied. "An experimental series, then," Harris grimaced. In 1978, binary chemical compounds were tested here, officially to develop new methods of geological exploration, in fact, a military program. They were studying how chemical markers diffuse in groundwater, how they interact with minerals. And something went wrong? I remembered the instructions with a vulture. The markers turned out to be too persistent. Instead of the planned decay period of 30 days, Some compounds remained active for years. The program was scrapped, the facilities mothballed. Some of the materials were hidden in the mines, cheaper than shipping them out. Turner spread a map on the table. James and his group accidentally discovered one of these caches. Probably decided to take the samples as evidence, but something happened. We don't know what it was. And those people who came recently? I asked. I'm not sure, but 3 of them were definitely military. The posture, the way they talk. They know what they're looking for. Harris tapped his finger on the map. And if they got official authorization, that means they have high-level support. I checked the time. It was less than 3 hours until the geological team arrived. I need to take another look at the mine, I said, standing up. Maybe they missed something. Harris held out a folded piece of paper to me. A diagram of the main tunnels. Possible storage areas are marked there. Be careful. Some compounds will activate on contact with air. On the way out, Turner held me up. You don't have to get involved in this, son. It's dangerous. These people have been hiding the truth about my son for 10 years. They'll stop at nothing. I'm a ranger. This is my park and my responsibility, I replied, though anxiety was growing inside. What would I do if I ran into government cover? The mine was quiet and cool. Using Harris's diagram, I went deeper than I had gone yesterday. The main tunnel branched off to form a complex network of passages. There were chalk marks on the walls, some fresh, others old and faded. Someone was methodically exploring every nook and cranny. On the 3rd level in the side drift, I found fresh signs of excavation. Someone was removing an old rubble pile. Among the excavated stones, I noticed a rusty metal box with a chemical hazard sign. The lid had been cracked open and the contents were gone. Gloves and a respirator were lying nearby. In the next branch, I came across something strange. A metal door with a code lock, obviously recently installed. It didn't fit in with the ambiance of an abandoned mine. The lock was modern, electronic, with a code panel. After checking the time, I decided to go back. There was an hour left before the so-called researchers arrived. I had to think about what to do next. At the exit of the mine, I noticed that the radio was alive. The reception was weak, but it was possible to distinguish the conversations. Someone was coordinating the team's arrival, mentioning the Alpha 17 sector and the W series samples. It didn't sound like normal geological protocol. I was on my way to my Jeep when I heard the sound of approaching cars. Too soon. 2 unmarked black SUVs were coming down the road toward the mine. I had to retreat quickly into the thicket. The SUVs stopped at the entrance to the mine. 5 men in civilian clothes, but with a military appearance, got out. 2 were carrying cases with equipment, the 3rd something like a special container for transporting hazardous substances. The 4th, obviously senior, was giving out instructions, checking a clipboard. The 5th stayed by the cars, scrutinizing the surroundings. I was able to take some pictures with a handheld camera issued by the Park Service to document violations. If something goes wrong, at least there is evidence. The group disappeared down the shaft. I retreated to the Jeep, trying not to make any noise. I had to warn Turner. But when I got to the trailer, there was no one there. The door was ajar. The inside was a mess. Someone had obviously been looking for documents. There were papers scattered on the floor, a chair overturned. Turner's pickup was gone. Harris's car was gone. There was a hastily written note on the table. They came early. They have a photo of James from the W12 site. Evidence exists. Meet me at the agreed-upon location. What is a W12 facility? And where's the agreed-upon location? Turner was obviously counting on me to know what he was talking about. I remembered our conversation yesterday. He mentioned the old lookout at Zabriskie Point, the place where his son had taken the first photograph of the expedition. I gathered up the scattered documents. Among them, I found an old photograph of 3 men in protective suits at the entrance to some underground structure. On the back was a stamp, Project Chimera, 1,978 inches and a handwritten signature. Samples extracted, vault mothballed, W12 under control. The walkie-talkie came to life again. All units, attention. Message for Ranger Holt. Return to Grapevine Base immediately. Federal officials have arrived. Requesting immediate rendezvous. Repeat. I switched off the radio. The feds are already at the base. That was fast. So the researchers weren't the only problem. Standing in the middle of the trashed trailer, I realized that the decision I made now would change everything. Follow protocol and return to base, or face Turner and learn the truth about what had happened to his son. The decision came naturally. I got in the Jeep and headed for Zabriskie Point. The truth about the Keen Wander mine was too important to be buried for another 10 years. The road to Zabriskie Point looped between ochre-colored rocks. The thermometer read 18 degrees. The walkie-talkie at minimum volume intermittently transmitted, "All units, Ranger Holt is not responding to calls. If located, report coordinates." 15 years in the Army, 2 years in the Park Service, and here I was ignoring orders. But Turner's words rang in my head. No one wants to know the truth. There weren't many tourists at Zabriskie Point. Remembering the old lookout that existed before the 80s renovations, I walked down the overgrown trail and found Turner with binoculars. "Where's Harris?" I asked. "Gone to Las Vegas to see some trusted journalists." Turner lowered the binoculars. "You've made your decision. I want to know the truth. Then I'll decide what to do with it." He pulled a tattered folder out of his rucksack. Copies of James's papers, the real ones, not the ones left in the trailer for diversion. The folder contained photos of the underground lab, copies of memos, schematics of technical devices. "Project Chimera began in 1975, Turner said quietly. "Developing chemical compounds with special properties, officially for geological exploration. Actually a new class of chemical warfare agents capable of penetrating standard defenses. Tested here because of the isolation and variety of geological conditions." He showed a map with the points marked. 12 ranges. W12 is the last and most serious. The Keen Wander mine is a storage facility for samples and equipment. The program was curtailed in 1982 because of international agreements. But the samples weren't destroyed. They were mothballed. "And your son's group found this vault in 1987? "James has been studying anomalous geological formations. He heard of strange occurrences at Keen Wander, got permission for an expedition and stumbled across the project's traces." Turner handed me a printout of the email, confirming that the 1987 incident has been cleared. Turner's team has been interned since the discovery of the W12 site. Witnesses have been isolated and materials confiscated. Recommend Operation Clean Sheet to prevent spill. Now they're opening up the vault again. Maybe technology allows them to safely extract the samples. Maybe the international situation has changed, but they'll cover their tracks for sure. The conversation was interrupted by the sound of a helicopter. A heavy Chinook was approaching the Keen Wander area. "Evacuation," Turner said. "Whatever they found is being hauled away right now. I need to get back, warn them of the danger. They're aware of it. Why do you think they have special defense class containers? But you decide for yourself." "And you?" I asked. "I have a meeting with Harris and his press contact. This story mustn't go away." On the way to the mine, I noticed a cordon. An SUV was blocking the road. People in uniforms without insignia were checking documents. I turned onto an old geological road that led to the eastern slope. It overlooked the mine site, 3 black SUVs, a helicopter, men in hazmat suits carrying containers. Through my binoculars, I could make out the familiar markings on one container, the same as on Harris's diagram. Series WG17, unstable specimens. I pulled out my radio, switched to the emergency channel. "Central, this is Holt. Code 10-23. Possible chemical threat in the Keen Wander area. Evacuation of civilians within a 3-mile radius is required." "Holt, what's your location? Stand by." I gave the coordinates and described the situation without mentioning Turner. The park's security protocol took precedence over any covert operations. Soon the park's response force swarmed to the area. A helicopter hastily took off with the containers. I made my way to the checkpoint where the leadership was already assembled. I was met by Chief of Security Richardson and 2 men with Home Office badges. "You disrupted an authorized research mission without grounds," Richardson began. "I have grounds." I laid out Turner's documents and photos of the operation. They were extracting samples of the WG17 series, unstable chemical compounds. The mine contains the Project Chimera Vault, a high-risk facility. The men in plain clothes glanced around. "Where did you get this information?" From a man whose son disappeared there 10 years ago under similar circumstances, I showed photos of Turner's group and a printout about interned witnesses. It's my responsibility to keep the park safe. It's my job. You're suspended from duty during the investigation, one of the feds said. An hour later, a chemical defense team arrived. The Keenwander neighborhood was cordoned off. The news report said it was a technical accident. That evening, while packing up the cabin, I heard the phone ring. "Do you have copies?" Turner's voice. "Photographed everything, and there's a witness statement." "Good. Harris has met with the reporter. The story will come out tomorrow," said Turner. "I'm going to have to leave the service." "I know. But you did the right thing, son. Some secrets are too dangerous to stay buried." Stepping out onto the porch, I looked up at the moon casting a silvery light over the desert. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. I didn't know what was in store for me tomorrow, but for the first time in a long time, I felt I had done the right thing. Death Valley holds many secrets, and some of them should remain under lock and key, and some shouldn't. After the events of February, a lot changed. My service in the national parks ended with an official at-will resignation. 6 weeks after the events, the Keenwander mine was completely closed. The entrance was concreted over, and the area was enclosed by a new fence with motion sensors. The official version, critical condition of structures, threat of collapse. A congressional commission launched an investigation, but most of the documents about Project Chimera were inaccessible for national security reasons. Nevertheless, we have made some progress. In July, a large-scale project on ecological monitoring of groundwater was launched in Death Valley. Officially, for scientific purposes. Unofficially, to make sure that chemicals have not spread outside the mine. The most unexpected was a visit from a representative of the Ministry of Defense in August. He offered me a job as a consultant on so-called environmental safety. I declined, but that spoke volumes. Turner got access to some of the archives. Officially, his son and his group are missing, but now he has at least part of the truth. We meet once a month at Zabriskie Point. He's aged over the year, but there's something new in his gaze, not calm, more like acceptance. Yesterday, he said, "You know, Jake, certainty is worse than uncertainty, but the truth is better than both. I'm going on a job interview tomorrow in Colorado. Private ranger service in a national forest. New chapter. After all, every ranger knows. Sometimes you have to leave a familiar route and take a new one. Death Valley remains in my past, but not its lessons. Some secrets must be revealed, whatever the cost." Friends, you've just heard the story of Ranger Jake Holt and the secrets of Death Valley. What would you do if you were him? Would you reveal the dangerous truth or maintain the status quo? How many more stories do silent canyons and abandoned mines hide? Remember, sometimes the worst danger is not in the wilderness, but in the footprints left by man. If the story struck a nerve, support it by liking and subscribing. Many more mysteries from the most remote corners of America's wildlife refuges lie ahead. See you in the next issue.